The disturbing mystery of Elisa Lam. On January 31st, 2013, 21-year-old Elisa Lam disappeared from the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles. At first, it seemed like a normal missing person case. But then, police discovered something disturbing. Security cameras had captured Elisa inside one of the hotel's elevators. She pressed several buttons. Then she stepped outside. She looked down the hallway. Then suddenly, she moved back into the elevator. She appeared to be hiding from someone, but there was nobody there. Elisa continued looking around the hallway before eventually walking away. It was the last known footage of her alive. Police searched the hotel, but Elisa was nowhere to be found. Days passed. Then hotel guests started complaining about something strange. The water pressure was low, and the water tasted unusual. Hotel workers eventually climbed onto the roof to inspect the water tanks. What they found inside one of them shocked everyone. Elisa Lam was dead. But the question was, how did she get inside a locked water tank on the roof? And why did she behave so strangely in that elevator? To this day, the case remains one of the most disturbing mysteries surrounding the Cecil Hotel. When hotel workers climbed onto the roof, they inspected the large water tanks that supplied the building. One of those tanks contained something nobody expected. Elisa Lam's body was inside. The discovery immediately raised a disturbing question. How had she gotten there? The water tanks were located on the roof of the hotel. And according to reports, the roof was not an area guests were normally supposed to access. Police began investigating how Elisa could have reached the tanks. There were no obvious answers. Her clothes and belongings were also found nearby. The case quickly attracted attention from around the world. But investigators still had to determine how Elisa died. The autopsy would become one of the most important parts of the investigation. According to the official findings, Elisa's death was ruled an accidental drowning. There was no clear evidence that another person had caused her death. But the elevator footage continued to bother people. Why was Elisa acting so strangely? Who was she looking at? And why did she appear to be hiding from someone who wasn't visible on camera? These questions turned the case into an internet mystery. People began studying the footage frame by frame. Some believed Elisa was experiencing a mental health episode. Others believed she was running from someone. And some developed much darker theories. But there was another strange detail that made the case even more controversial. The elevator footage had been edited and slowed down when it was released to the public. That caused some people to believe something had been hidden. But there is an important distinction. A strange video does not automatically mean there was a conspiracy. Sometimes, the simplest explanation is also the hardest one to accept. And in Elisa Lam's case, the truth may be much more tragic than the theories. After Elisa Lam's body was discovered, investigators tried to reconstruct her final hours. The biggest question was simple. How did she end up on the roof? The official conclusion was that Elisa had drowned accidentally. But that still left many people confused. Why would she climb onto the roof? And how did she get into the water tank? Some theories suggested that Elisa may have been experiencing a severe mental health episode. Her behavior in the elevator could support that possibility. She appeared confused. She looked around as if she was searching for someone. And at times, her movements seemed completely unpredictable. But the internet wasn't satisfied with that explanation. People began creating their own theories. Some believed someone else had been inside the elevator. Others claimed Elisa was being followed. Some even suggested that the hotel itself was connected to her death. The Cecil Hotel already had a dark reputation. Over the years, several deaths and disturbing incidents had occurred there. That history made Elisa's case even more fascinating to the public. But there was one problem with many of the theories. There was no solid evidence proving that another person was involved. No confirmed suspect, no clear sign of a struggle, and no evidence showing exactly what happened during Elisa's final moments. The elevator footage remained the biggest mystery. Millions of people watched it. Everyone noticed the same strange behavior. But nobody could hear what Elisa was saying. Nobody knew what she was seeing. And nobody knew what was happening inside her mind. Then investigators looked at something else. The hotel's security and the way Elisa could have reached the roof. And this is where another important detail enters the story. The roof of the Cecil Hotel became one of the biggest questions in the entire investigation. Elisa had somehow made her way up there. But the exact route she took was never completely clear to the public. The water tanks were large, enclosed structures. And getting inside one of them was not something a normal hotel guest would simply do. So how did Eliza get there? One possibility is that she deliberately climbed onto the roof and entered the tank herself. But another question immediately followed. If she had entered the tank herself, why didn't she get back out? The tanks were deep. Once inside, climbing back out would have been extremely difficult. Investigators ultimately found no convincing evidence that another person had placed her there. That didn't stop the theories. The internet exploded with explanations. Some people claimed the elevator footage showed Eliza communicating with someone who had been removed from the video. Others believed the case was connected to the hotel's dark history, and some theories became even more extreme. But there was one detail that investigators could actually examine: the hotel's rooftop access. If someone else had been involved, investigators would have needed to determine whether another person could have entered the area unnoticed. There was no clear evidence proving that happened. And that is why the case remains so controversial. The strangest part isn't necessarily that Eliza was found inside the tank. It's that we can actually watch some of her final moments, but we still don't know exactly what she was experiencing. The camera captured her movements. It captured the elevator. It captured the hallway. But it never captured the answer. And eventually, the official investigation reached its conclusion. Elisa Lam's death was ruled accidental. But for millions of people who watched that footage, the mystery was far from over. Even after the official investigation ended, people continued searching for answers. The elevator footage became one of the most watched pieces of evidence in the case. People slowed it down. They zoomed in. They studied every movement. Some believed Eliza was talking to someone outside the camera's view. Others believed she was frightened. But there was never enough evidence to prove those theories. The simplest explanation is that Eliza may have been experiencing a severe mental health episode and became disoriented. If that was the case, her strange behavior in the elevator may have had nothing to do with another person. She may have simply been confused about what was happening around her. And that possibility makes the story even more tragic, because there may never have been a mysterious stranger. No hidden killer. No secret conspiracy. Just a young woman who became lost in a frightening situation. The Cecil Hotel itself became almost as famous as the case. Its dark history, combined with the disturbing elevator footage, turned Elisa's disappearance into an internet phenomenon. But it's important to remember that behind every theory was a real person. Elisa Lam was not a fictional character. She was a 21-year-old woman whose life ended far too soon. More than a decade later, people are still fascinated by her final moments. The elevator footage still raises questions. The rooftop still feels disturbing. And the case still has details that are difficult to understand. But sometimes, a mystery doesn't have a secret ending. Sometimes the truth is simply tragic. Elisa Lam disappeared inside the Cecil Hotel. Her final moments were captured on camera. And despite all the theories, the world may never know exactly what happened to her. If you enjoyed this mystery, hit like and subscribe for more disturbing true stories.